Today we're checking out the front upper control arms for a 2 to 4 inch lift on the 2021 and newer F-150s, but excluding the Raptor. If you've lifted or leveled your truck and the front end just doesn't feel right, you have odd ball joint angles or some tough alignments, these arms are built to fix that and bring back clean handling, so they are definitely worth checking out. The key feature here is going to start with the corrected suspension geometry for a 2 to 4 inch leveled or lifted truck. So the ball joint is going to sit at a happier angle and the suspension has more usable travel. That means less bind at full droop, better steering feel, and an easier time getting proper caster during alignment, especially on trucks with bigger tires and anybody running any suspension mods. You get high angle ball joints for increased articulation, polyurethane bushings for a tighter, long-lasting feel, and greasable sockets with pre-installed dust boots to keep the grit out. There's also a gusher style bearing that lets the grease flow through the joint to cut friction, plus a special ball joint head design that makes future service and removal simpler. Bottom line, they're going to help a 2 to 4 inch lifted F-150 track straighter, ride smoother over bumps, and clear suspension components better than those stock arms. When it comes to the construction on this, these use heavy-duty steel tubing tied into solid carbon steel plates with very high-quality welds for added strength. Everything is powder coated to fight corrosion, and the bushings, sleeves, and the Zerk fittings come with the box so you can get them set up right away and keep it greased over time. The ball joints are built for a range of motion and longevity, and the overall package is designed to bolt in cleanly to that 21 to 25 F-150. As far as the pricing goes on this, it's coming in right in the $400 price range. For a complete set with corrected geometry angles and high angle ball joints with greasable hardware, that's a solid value if you've lifted your truck and you want it to drive the way it should. When it comes to the install on this one, it's going to get rated just a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and you can get this job done in 1 hour of your time if everything goes smooth. Now let's see exactly how this install process goes with a video from one of our AmericanTrucks customers.
All of the parts that we use today is a 1/2 inch impact with a 13 millimeter in extension. This is for your axle nut. You have a 13/16 socket. This is for your lug nuts, a 3/4 inch socket, a 6 millimeter Allen wrench, a ratchet with a 10 millimeter socket, a ratchet with a 13 millimeter socket with a short extension, a hammer, a long pry bar, needle nose pliers, 3/4 inch wrench, a 21 millimeter wrench, a flathead screwdriver, and a grease gun to grease your ball joints. You also need your jack stand as well as a vehicle jack to lift the vehicle up.
You'll want to lift the vehicle in the spot shown where the jack is and go until your wheel is completely off the ground. As you can see, the wheel is completely off of the ground. For this step, you will want a 13/16 inch socket on a impact gun. You'll just go and release all of these lug nuts. Pro tip, you don't want to take these all the way off with your impact. That way your socket does not get stuck onto the lug nut, and it makes it easier to pull it off on each time. Now with your lug nuts off, you'll take the wheel off. The next step of what you'd like to do is remove this dust cover, which will be done by removing all of these plastic tabs. The next step of what you would like to do is remove these cables from their plastic tabs that are holding them in place. nuts out of the way. The next step you would like to do is to remove this brake line holder, and that can be done with your 10mm ratchet socket. And set this aside. The next thing you would like to do is to remove this nut of the sway bar link so you can remove it. This will take a 13/16 inch socket, and you can put this on an impact or a ratchet. Remove that bolt. Remove the sway bar link. The next course of action would be to place a jack stand underneath the lower control arm right by this knuckle and lower the vehicle onto it very slowly. Whenever it rests onto the jack stand and the vehicle won't lower anymore, jack it back up just a little bit just to keep an additional point of contact on the vehicle for safety. Next, you will want to remove the ball joint of the upper control arm from the knuckle. This will be done with a 3/4 inch ratchet or wrench. Remove that nut. To remove the ball joint from the knuckle, you will strike the knuckle in this spot a couple times and it should pop out. The next thing you'll want to do is remove the tie rod end from the knuckle. This will be done by using a 21mm ratchet or wrench and removing this nut. Now with the nut off, you can take your hammer again, tap on the knuckle, and this should pop out. Just like that, pop out. You can set that aside and get out of the way. The next course of action would be to remove the dust cap from the CV axle cover. And this you will use a flathead screwdriver and just pry on the outside, and it should come loose and come off. To remove this nut, you will want a 13mm socket on an impact, preferably on an impact so that the axle does not spin while you're trying to remove it. And just like that, the CV axle nut comes off and is ready for removal. In order to remove the CV axle from the knuckle, you want to pull this knuckle out and remove this from the spline. This will not fully come out until you lift the vehicle back up. And this is what we will do now. Back off the ground from the jack stand, then you'll be able to successfully remove the CV axle from the knuckle. And for that, you just pull up on it and it will come out. Just set that aside. In order to keep all these cables from overextending, something that I would like to do is push the knuckle up. Take a strap of some sort. In this case, I will be using a bungee cable and hold it up towards the frame. And with that out of the way, protecting your cables, now we will move to removing the strut. For this section of removing the strut, there are 3 nuts on top of the coil housing that you need to remove. And that will take an 18mm wrench or socket. Now with these nuts out and away from the studs, you will now remove the strut from its housing and lay it on its side. For this, it's very helpful to use a long pry bar. Just like that. This can be laid right here, and now you can move to taking the upper control arm out of its place. For this section, you'll be removing this nut along with this bolt on the inside of the coil tower, and that will require a 3/4 inch and a 21 millimeter. With that nut removed, you can now remove the bolt that holds in the left side of the upper control, like so. And we'll now move to this right side, where you'll remove the same nut and bolt, except it's just reflected onto the right side of the coil housing. There are brake lines behind this nut, so you want to be very careful that you do not puncture or bend those. This will be the same 3/4 and 21 millimeter. Now remove that nut and hold onto the control arm while you pull out this bolt, otherwise it will fall. And you may now remove the stock upper control arm. Now per KSP, there are 2 bushing tubes and 2 bushings for each side that need to be installed on this upper control arm. In order to do that, just take the bushings, you can press them in with your hand, like so. And once those are installed, you can take the bushing tubes and slide those. You may need a hammer to get them all the way through if it's too tight. Go to the other side. And the last step would be to install the grease zerks into their supply holes, pointing in the general direction of the ball joint so that you are able to get to them whenever you need to grease your joints. You will want to tighten these with a wrench or a set of pliers, but you don't want to over tighten because they will strip very easily. Now with those tightened up, they are ready to be put in once you remove this cap. Before you install your new upper control arm, you will take the supplied grease packet and apply it to the insides of the hole where the bushings of the new upper control arm will be rubbing. You can do the same for the other side, and then you are all ready to put your new upper control arm in its spot. You will be reusing the same bolt and nut that you used to take it off and insert it into the new upper control arm. You will then take the same 21 millimeter and 3/4 inch wrenches that you used before and tighten it. Same for the opposite side. And with that completed, you can raise the new upper control arm out of the way and reinsert your strut into the hole. Long pry bar again to help guide it into the supply hole. Next thing you will do is reinsert your tie rod into the knuckle and take the nut that you took off and reinsert it. For this, your spindle will want to spin, so you will want a 10 millimeter socket on a ratchet as well as your 21 millimeter wrench. Once it tightens up, you won't need the wrench anymore. You will once again go underneath the vehicle with your jack stand and place it back under the knuckle and slowly and safely lower the vehicle onto the jack stand. And once you have that, then we can go back around the vehicle and reinsert the upper control arm
You'll now come back around and insert your upper control arm spindle into the knuckle of the vehicle. You may need to press it in with a pry bar. You'll now use the new supplied nut and thread it onto the new upper control arm. And you will use a 3/4 inch wrench and a 6mm Allen key. And the Allen key will go into the new spindle to keep it from spinning. And you can use the wrench to tighten. You'll now reinstall your sway bar link into this hole. You may need to use a pry bar to pry down on the sway bar so you can push it all the way through. This will be a 21mm wrench. Then go to reinstall your wire hangers, which will be that 10mm bolt that we took out earlier. You will tighten that. You double check that everything is tight and that you did everything in order correctly. Next step is to go back up here where we took out these cable ties in the beginning and put them back in their respective spots. Once those are back, then you check all of your bolts that you have touched and ensure that they are all tight. You can go through your hanger, your sway bar link, your upper control arm, ball joint, your 3 bolts on top of the strut, which are up here, and then your nuts on the sides of your control arm, your control arm, and then make sure you put the dust cover back on and tighten that nut on the axle, and ensure your tie rod nut is tight. And that is everything that we have touched today. Now, before you put your wheel back on, you want to grab a grease gun with grease in it. And you'll want to grease up your grease zerks that are on your control arm. A zerk that is underneath this cover, and there's ones that we installed underneath these. There's a little opening tab right on the side of this cover. We'll just go pry that out, and it'll look like this. And you will grease that until the boot itself starts to expand, and then you will stop. If you go more than that, you will damage the boot and it will not seal properly. And once you are done greasing up the ball joint zerk, you'll put this dust cap back on, like so. Then you will hit your grease zerks underneath your ball joint bolts. And apply grease. Next, we're going to reinstall the fender liner cover with the pins that we took out and put that back in its spot. Had it backwards. And with that done, we can finally put the wheel back on the vehicle. Now, with everything reinstalled, we can put the wheel back on the vehicle. You will take the supplied 13/16 nuts and reinstall those. Now with your 13/16 socket on an impact, you can try tighten these back up in a star pattern going crossways. Then it's always a good idea to go and recheck the torque of the first two just to make sure they didn't loosen up when you tighten the other ones. And that's everything you need to do to install the upper control arms.
All right, that wraps up our review and install of the front upper control arms for the 2 to 4 inch lift on the 2021 and newer F-150s, but excluding the Raptor. And for all things F-150, keep it right here at American Trucks.